I'm going to help you with your dog or cat's pancreatitis, and we are going to cover the full thing. We are going to understand all the causes, all the types of pancreatitis, all the symptoms, and all the treatments. And I am going to delve very, very deep for free in this seminar, a lot deeper than your vet will likely we have gotten. And so if you think you need the help with your dog or cat's pancreatitis, this video is going to absolutely blow your mind and is going to teach you so much. So I highly encourage you to stay until the end, because I will reveal some of the natural things you can do for your dog or cat's condition that are very, very inexpensive. And so before we start, I want to say that I'm Sam. I am a dog and cat nutritionist, and I am the proud owner of a small chain of independent pet shops here in the UK, where every single week hundreds of dogs and cats sometimes come through our doors and we solve their problems with nutrition, allergies, cardiovascular health, things like pancreatitis, diabetes, allergies, gastrointestinal upsets, that sort of thing. And we solve everything with the power of nutrition. We understand nutrition. So we are going to delve into pancreatitis. So it's very, very important that you sometimes maybe take notes or you pay full attention to the whole thing. So what does the pancreas do? This is the first thing we need to be cognizant of whenever we are talking about a disease. What does the actual organ do? Well, it has two functions rather, the exocrine function and the endocrine function. So what is the exocrine function? Well, it releases digestive enzymes. Whenever me and you or your dog or cat digests carbohydrates, proteins and fats, they secrete the right enzymes to do so. They secrete amylase, protease and lipase. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates, protease breaks down protein, and lipase from lipids breaks down or works on fats. And it's very, very important that you get to know all these terminology, because it's going to help you with your pet's disease. Anyway, so these are released in the pancreas into the small intestine, aiding in the fat, the carbohydrate and protein breakdown. So anytime your dog or cat eats, amylase, protease and lipase get released, and they break down those carbohydrates, proteins and fats. That's the one thing. The second thing it does is regulates blood sugar levels via hormones like insulin and glucagon. And insulin is one of those enzymes, is one of those things that you hear about all the time and you don't really know what it does. But we are going to delve deep into insulin and what it does and how you can help or hinder your dog or cat's condition by feeding them the right or the wrong food. So it's extremely important that the regulation of blood sugar levels with insulin or glucagon gets done properly with the right foods, and I'll come back to that later. So what is pancreatitis? So itis, whenever you hear itis in your GP or wherever, itis means inflammations. Dermatitis, inflammation of the skin. Otitis, inflammation of your eardrum. And pancreatitis, inflammation of the pancreas. So this is a painful condition where the pancreas becomes inflamed due to early activation of the digestive enzymes, the amylase, protease and lipase. And this leads to potential damage to surrounding organs, the liver, the bile duct, etc. Everything is connected down there, if you know what I mean. Your liver, your pancreas, your kidneys, everything is sort of connected, and one thing can have repercussions on the other organs. So what are the different types of pancreatitis? Well, we have sudden or acute pancreatitis. We have a severe inflammation, and this requires immediate veterinary care. So if your dog is on the couch and it's in a fetal sort of position and it's crouched over and it's really in pain, that could be the sign of acute pancreatitis and you unfortunately need to rush the dog to the vet or your cat to the vet, and they will do their best to mitigate that condition. The second one is chronic pancreatitis, and chronic pancreatitis, it's estimated that 1 in 5 dogs and cats suffer from chronic pancreatitis due to the diets we provide them with, and I'm going to touch upon the diets later on, and getting down to the right diet is extremely important. But anyway, this develops slowly with lower grade inflammation. So this is if your dog or cat is getting the wrong food day in and day out, that is going to build inflammation over time, and it's going to be a little bit at a time, and it's not going to be all of a sudden. It's not going to be fatal, it's not going to be acute, but it's going to chip away and chip away and chip away, and that's not something we want. And this is going to eventually lead to something called EPI, which is exocrine pancreatic deficiency. So German Shepherds, for example, if you are watching this and you have a German Shepherd, German Shepherds are very, very prone to having exocrine pancreatic deficiencies or insufficiencies, but it is not exclusive to German Shepherds, and this gets worse over time if it goes untreated. So what are the symptoms? And the symptoms aren't exclusive, and they can vary because you might feed the dog something, they might have a reaction to it, and then they get worse or whatever. Hopefully with this seminar you'll be able to mitigate, understand, and know what to do and what not to do, and you will avoid some of these symptoms. So we have abdominal pain, acute abdominal pain. We have a hunched posture of the dog or cat. We then have vomiting, fever, even bloody diarrhea, dehydration, or the dog or cat is restless. But a lot of the chronic pancreatitis we see is if your dog's or cat's stools are yellowy and gooey and they look a bit weird, they have like an oily layer on top of it. That's a very clear indication that the lipase, remember the enzyme that breaks down lipids, fats, isn't working properly. So there's a lot of fats going undigested, passing through undigested and showing up in the dog or cat stools. And so if you see these oily, yellowy sort of stool, that could be an indication of chronic pancreatitis or some degree of pancreatitis. But, you know, in terms of chronic pancreatitis, we have again vomiting, poor appetite, the dog or cat is on and off their food more than normal, I would say. We have sudden weight loss, and that's always a very scary one for pet parents. We have, again, oily stools. We have just discussed those. Flatulence, if your dog or cat keeps pumping all the time, that is another sign that the dog's stomach, that the dog's pancreas is not able to cope with the food you are providing them with. And then we have poor coat condition, but this could be gastrointestinal issues, it could be allergies, it could be anything. So how does it get diagnosed in the vet? And this is one of my biggest pet peeves whenever it comes to the veterinary industry and how they do things, because I don't think they do things correctly, and I'm going to explain to you why. So what your vet is likely to do is they're going to run some blood tests, and they are going to check for elevated pancreatic enzymes like lipase. So they are looking for something called hyperlipidemia, hyperlipoproteinemia, which is the inability for the pancreas to break down lipids, to break down fats. Hyperlipidemia, it's called. And so they are going to associate fat with a low-fat diet, and I'm going to explain to you later on in the video why that is the completely wrong approach. You should not automatically see a high lipid count and associate it with a high fat diet or a low fat diet, and I'm going to explain to you why later on in the video. But that's not very reliable. Sometimes the most reliable one is the pancreatic specific lipase, and that is the most reliable because it comes from within the pancreas. Other diagnostics is a complete blood counts, abdominal radiographs, like if we take a photograph of the abdomen, and then ultrasounds to confirm inflammation or other abnormalities. But the most common one is elevated lipid levels, hyperlipidemia, and the vet is going to give you a bag of dog food, which is low fat, and that's going to be the course of action. And that is not what you should do, because hyperlipidemia, excess fat in the blood, is caused for a lot more from other sources than actual fat. And I'm going to discuss that later. So, the prevalence, this is up to 64% of certain dogs and certain cats have some sort of pancreatitis or some sort of pancreatic deficiency. So it is very common. The thing, it goes undetected. It goes undetected because this is not something you test every single day. This is something that you test every now and then, or whenever you have a very clear indication. But this can have a very lasting impact on your dog or cat. So we have gone over the different types of pancreatitis. How do we treat pancreatitis? If your dog has acute pancreatitis, you have to rush your dog or cat to the vet, and they're going to be hospitalized. They are going to get some IV fluids into them, and they're going to be prescribed some medication, and rightfully so. This is very, very dangerous, and you should always follow veterinary advice. You should feed the dog bland meals and fast and frequent meals. What you cannot do is get the actual dog or cat to be working extra time with big meals. We want bland meals, we want small meals, and we want, if possible, frequent meals. We don't want to see any rice, and this is something, again, I'm going to go back later. We don't want this chicken and rice malarkey that a lot of vets prescribe. We don't want, hopefully, any carbohydrates in their diet, and I'll discuss that later. With chronic pancreatitis, we are going to eliminate high carbohydrates, highly refined carbohydrates, and if possible, any dry food, and we are going to favor fresh foods, raw foods, or whatever you can provide your dog or cat. And this is where people tend to not understand the disease. So if you feed your dog a veterinary prescription diet, that veterinary prescription diet, even if it's low fat, it's going to be very high in carbohydrates. And that is a problem. Why is it a problem? Well, excess carbohydrates convert into triglycerides, into fat in the liver, right? So your liver is going to metabolize those carbohydrates and store them as fat. Excess carbohydrates as fat. So if you eat pasta 5 times a day and you overconsume calories, pasta is very low in fat, but you are going to put weight on because you are eating more than you are consuming. Therefore, you are going to put weight on. The problem with kibble, the problem with veterinary prescription diets is that, yes, they are low fat, very, very low fat, but they're very high carb. And so without the actual portion control required for your dog or cat to be fed properly, we have 2 problems. Possible overconsumption of carbohydrates, highly refined carbohydrates. Those are going to spike insulin levels, right? And then those excess carbohydrates are going to turn into triglycerides in the liver, into fat in the liver. You can do this at home. If you eat pasta, again, 5 times a day, you are going to put weight on if you overconsume calories. This is the same thing. And the second thing you are going to do is remember the exocrine and the endocrine function of the pancreas and releasing of the insulin and this, that, the other. If your dog or cat's pancreas is not working properly and it's struggling to cope with carbohydrates and proteins and fats, the worst thing you can do is overload the dog with carbohydrates, overload the pancreas with carbohydrates, because insulin is going to be released, and that is going to be hard for your pet to be able to cope with, because you're giving the dog too many carbohydrates. 50, 60, 70 or 80% carbohydrates in some of the dry foods we feed our dogs, especially the veterinary prescription ones. That's why we do not recommend them, because yes, they are low fat. Low fat is not the end of the road. Excess carbohydrates convert into fat in the liver. That's a lot of what you need to know about pancreatitis. The second thing you need to know about pancreatitis is that you need to keep your pet lean. Keeping your pet lean is going to improve their good cholesterol, is going to decrease their LDL cholesterol, which is the bad cholesterol, and it's going to do wonders for your dog or cat. So if they are in some way, shape or form a bit podgy and a bit overweight and they have pancreatitis, please put them on a diet, and that's going to increase the chances that your dog or cat is going to survive this. So what causes as well pancreatitis? Well, we have certain medications, certain vaccines, certain gut health issues. Those can increase risks, and so the best thing you can do is treat this with the right foods. So again, high carbohydrate diets contribute to blood fat levels more than dietary fats, increasing pancreatic strain. So high carbohydrates, highly palatable foods, a lot of these, especially veterinary prescription foods, contain sugar or a sugar derivative, making them more palatable, combined with high glycemic carbohydrates. They're going to spike insulin levels. Your dog's pancreas is going to struggle converting those excess carbohydrates into fats, or knowing what to do with so many carbohydrates. And so that's not the right course of action. And then we have, again, the breeds. Certain genetics and certain dogs are more prone to having EPI, exocrine pancreatic deficiency, than others. We have German Shepherds, we have Dachshunds, etc, etc. And then if your dog already has diabetes or is a bit overweight, then pancreatitis is one of the things that they can incur in, because at the end of the day, diabetes, pancreatitis, we are talking about, generically speaking, the same organs. So let's take a close look at carbohydrates in pancreatitis and fat in pancreatitis. So ultra processed dog foods, which is kibble, which is what you are likely giving your dog or cat and have been giving your dog or cat for a very long time, are again full of corn, wheat, barley, rice, sugar or sugar derivatives. If you are in the United States, the amount of different additives that you get in your food, in your pet food, and the colorants, the natural flavors, etc, etc, is ridiculous. The quality of the ingredients you guys have is pretty staggering. So corn protein meal, for example, is one, and those aren't good ingredients. As with our foods, if we go to McDonald's or KFC every single day and we put weight on, we are going to be more inclined to having certain health issues, health outcomes, and pancreatitis is one. So what is the role of carbohydrates and why I want you to understand the role of carbohydrates so much. And this is it, right? So in both human and dogs and cats, diets high in carbohydrates are known to elevate triglycerides. This is fat, right? In the blood. Carbohydrates get converted into triglycerides, and these accumulate then in the bloodstream, placing stress on the pancreas. Now, this condition is known hyperlipidemia or hypertriglyceridemia, and this is a precursor or a cause of pancreatitis. Now, once again, commercial dry foods are going to emphasize low fat, but are going to be very high in fats to increase the shelf life and to lower costs. And this leads veterinary prescription diets to be the completely wrong thing to do for your dog or cat. So if you are feeding your dog kibble, which is high in starches, high in grains, high in things like potato, tapioca starch, for example, those are going to lead more to fat and fat accumulation than the low fat they are going to contain. We then have inflammation, right? If your pancreas is struggling to cope with, once again, carbohydrates, proteins and fats, and digesting them, releasing the enzymes to digest them well, by giving our dog or cat highly refined carbohydrates, that's going to increase inflammation, is going to exacerbate the problem. So once again, carbohydrates and fats serve as fuel sources. You can fuel yourself with carbohydrates and fats. You can eliminate carbohydrates, and that will enable your dog or cat to something called gluconeogenesis, which is the ability for your dog or cat to convert proteins and fats into carbohydrates, into sugar, into glucose within the liver. And this can be a good thing, not a bad thing. So your dog or cat is more naturally inclined or adapted to consume fat than carbohydrates, right? Because high carb diets rely on glycogen, which is derived from carbs, as primary fuel, and this places a lot more stress on the pancreas. And again, constant reliance on carbohydrates prevent efficient fat metabolism, leading to carb-induced fat buildup within the blood. So we are going to try to eliminate all the starches in our dog or cat's food. That's going to be the first thing. So I don't want to see any rice. I don't want to see any potato starch, any tapioca starch. I don't want to see any corn, wheat, barley. I don't want to see any maize. I don't want to see any of these nonsensical ingredients that, once again, are going to elevate insulin levels. Any overconsumption of these fast refined carbohydrates are going to then convert into fat, and your dog or cat is going to be a lot worse off as a consequence. So what are the recommendations for a low carb diet that prevents and heals pancreatitis? And this is something we do every single day in our branches, in our consultations, etc. And by the way, we have a free dog guide, how to feed your dog better, and we dissect a lot of what we are saying in that book. You can grab it in the link down in the description. It's completely free, and it'll help you a lot with your dog or cat's understanding of what is good and bad for them, what the right food might be. But anyway, we also have a cookbook, a DIY cookbook you can download. We have a lot of resources, including a pancreatitis guide that again you can download again, but that has a cost. So I want you to hopefully and encourage you to try to switch your dog's diet from a kibble diet to a fresh food diet. So fresh whole food diet, you can go to your local pet shop and they will give you something which is moderate fat. So instead of looking for the lowest fat possible and the highest carbohydrate possible in kibble, why don't we feed the dog an 80-10-10 or a 70-10-10, meaning 80% is going to be lean meats, very, very lean. We want to see no more than 10%, but if it's 12%, that's okay, right? We don't want to see 5% or 2% fat. That is ridiculous. For example, kangaroo or ostrich, I believe, are 2% fat, but that's way too low. Rabbit, I think that's way too low. We need a bit of fat. Fat is such an important thing for your dog or cat. They need fat. They need dietary fat. What we need is a small amount of low glycemic carbohydrates. But anyway, 80 or 70% lean meats. We then get 10% offal, of which 5% is going to be liver. It's all in the book and it's free. And then 10% is going to be bone. And bone is a part of their diet. If you are going for 70%, you can add some cruciferous vegetables, some leafy greens, lightly cooked or pureed, right? And those are going to provide your dog with some fiber. Fresh food is better than processed food for pancreatitis, for diabetes, for everything. If you have a medical condition, whether that's I don't know, whatever the case might be, even if it's unrelated, even if you break your hip, if you break a bone, right? Is eating processed foods better than eating fresh foods? No. Eating fresh foods is always going to be better than eating processed foods. So a fresh food diet is going to be better for any condition, including pancreatitis, than a dry food or ultra processed food. So rich in animal proteins, low in carbohydrates, low in low glycemic carbohydrates. Think about what are high glycemic carbohydrates and low glycemic carbohydrates. If I eat a McDonald's or a burger bun or something, cereals for example, right? If I have like a 30-gram serving of cereal, when am I going to be hungry again? Very, very soon, because it's nutrient rich, but it's highly palatable. It converts into sugar very, very quickly. Is not satiating. It doesn't have any fiber, right? If I have some meat and vegetables, the vegetables are going to slow the passage of food. They're going to be filling, satiating. The fresh meat is going to be better for me than cereal or than a Big Mac. It's night and day. It's literally night and day. I then want you to transition to smaller meals instead of 1 or 2 meals a day if possible. Cats should be fed mouse-sized meals forever because that's what they are inherently inclined to do. They are genetically modified to do that, inclined to do that. With dogs, they can ingest up to 10% body weight in one sitting. We don't want that. That's too much, in my opinion. If your dog can consume up to 5-10% of their body weight in one sitting, their pancreas is going to have a lot more to work with. So how about 3 meals a day, 4 meals a day? Easily digestible meals. and we're going to sprinkle them along the day, right? We are going to prevent blood sugar spikes. So again, whenever I eat, wherever I eat, the pancreas is going to release amylase, protease, and lipase to attack or to digest carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. If I am doing that with a lot of food or with the wrong foods, the insulin spikes are going to be way too high. We want to maintain the blood sugar levels. Keep it simple, small meals, frequent meals, low glycemic carbohydrates, if at all, moderate fat, and find something that works for you. Find something that is going to be adequate for your dog or cat's condition. We think that fresh is a lot better than processed. It's definitely better than ultra processed, and so that, in our opinion, is the right way to do things. If you require a consultation, or if you want to learn more about pancreatitis, you can download the guide below, and that has pretty much everything you need to know about pancreatitis. Let me know what you think, like, subscribe, and I'll see you soon.